Hey guys, and welcome back to my currently very dirty high mileage Golf R. What we're going to talk about today is my experience over the last year of ownership. Well, actually it's more like 14 months because I bought this car in October of 2022 and now we spent a year with it. And in this video I'll tell you things I don't like about it, things I do like about it, and finally any issues or cost of maintenance that I've into owning this car for the last year. Just a quick recap on this car and why I even bought it in the first place. Well, honestly, this is probably the most affordable way with today's market to get into any type of Golf R or R32, which those have skyrocketed. And I needed something to be a little bit more economical for daily driving to use for work. When I bought this car, it had 147,000-ish miles on it. Now it's sitting at 161,000 with change. So we put something like 14,000 miles on this car over the last year and 2 months. I was fortunate enough that this was a car that was serviced at a VW dealer its whole life. The same dealer it was purchased at was the same dealer that it got traded into and where it was serviced. I had 11 pages or something like that of just service records on this car. Now we've done some stuff with this car, but I haven't really done any real modifications on it. I like the way that it is stock, and it's been honestly pretty reliable, probably because it's not modified, but that's probably going to change. So you guys probably want to subscribe if you want to see what's going to happen with the Golf R going forward. I'll put links in the description below where you could see what we've done with the Golf R up until now. All right, well, let's dive into it. Obviously, it's dirty. As I mentioned, I haven't washed it, but even dirty with the sun setting, looks pretty good. So, things I don't like about the car. One, this is a 3-door model, not a 5-door model. And honestly, I would have preferred to have 4 doors instead of 2. This area here causes a blind spot when you're merging and stuff like that. Now, the solution for that is I'm going to probably end up getting some of those convex mirror, corner mirror things, not those stick-on ones. Those are awful. VW makes a glass that is convex at the very end, so you get rid of the blind spot. So that's something that could be corrected, but I don't like that blind spot that we have there. There's been a few times where I cut somebody off because I can't see them because my head is literally right where this B pillar is. Another thing I'm not a fan of is the traction control system. From my understanding, this is US only, that you can't fully disable stability control on this car. I have it fully disabled now with the touch of a button, and you could do that with some programming. So if you have a Golf R or any Mark 6 and you want to disable stability control, you can do it. You just need a friend with VADCOM, and I'll put a link in the description for programming out disabling the stability control. Some people don't want it. I don't like it. If you bought a performance car with all-wheel drive, you want to be able to disable traction control and have some fun. Another thing is just a lack of sound. This car is bone stock, no exhaust whatsoever, but these, even when you put an exhaust on them, they don't sound all that great, and that's kind of the part that sucks. After going from an R32 to something like this, it was such a huge step in the other direction when it comes just to the visceral sound of it. Engine makes more power, obviously, because it's a turbocharged one, but the lack of sound is not my favorite thing. With this one specifically, one thing I don't like is that I don't have a sunroof. They call this the Motorsport Special, if you will, if you have no sunroof, less overhead weight, which make the car handle better, right? And honestly, that will pretty much sum up for things I don't like about it. It's actually a little easier to talk about things I do like about this car. So before we dive into the things I do like, because it's quite a good list, I actually do like this car quite a lot. We'll talk about a few things that I did on it. It had extremely leather headlights, and I found these lenses online. Really find them from any like reputable place. You have to just find Golf ones on, I think I found these on eBay, and I had to do a little modification to make them fit. One day I would like to probably get the European headlights on it, the ones that are more smoked out. But honestly, the headlights are good on it, and especially when they're clean, look significantly better. That was one thing that really bothered me. Another thing we did, it needed, so I upgraded them, and the calipers were extremely faded, so I decided to paint them yellow because gray and yellow looks pretty cool. And I've never had yellow calipers on a car, so why not? They needed a paint job and a refresh anyway. We also got the car tinted with how low it is to the ground. I got so used to daily driving a pickup truck. All the glare from behind was driving me insane, so I needed to get. Plus, in the South, you want to have tint because it does get pretty hot. We also put on European Golf R taillights. These are actually replicas I got from ECS Tuning because I wasn't about to spend over $2,000 on taillights, and they've worked great. I've had no issues with them whatsoever. So, things I do like about this car, and there's quite a huge list. I'll narrow it down to just a few highlights. One, I think it is the ultimate Golf, if that makes sense, with all-wheel drive, the comfort, the space, and everything else, all in a fun small package. It is the perfect Golf, which is part of the reason I haven't really modified this car, because the way it drives out of factory is one of the best cars I probably have ever owned. I think the Mark 6 facelift, essentially, because it's on the same platform as a Mark 5, but the Mark 6 looks significantly better than the Mark 5. I did not like on Mark 5's the whole one solid grille thing. It just didn't work for me. It was too rounded, too bubbly. This looks more like a Golf to me, and it's a little bit more aggressive. Another thing I do like is the interior. These seats are nowhere near as aggressive as a Mark 4 or 32 seat would be, but they're honestly very comfortable. The wife likes riding in this thing because these seats are very comfortable. They have the right amount of bolster to you not slide around when you're trying to be a speed racer. So I like it. I like the interior on this thing. I like the ergonomics and usability of everything. I like the blue gauges or needles that are obviously Golf R specific, but it is kind of plain otherwise on the inside in comparison to like a GTI or a regular Golf. You barely get more extra goodies, but I do like it. It's very user-friendly and a lot of fun to drive. Another thing that I like about it is probably the final thing is the memories that I've already had with this car over the last year. As I said, it's done 14,000 miles, and that's amongst me having other cars to drive, but I've taken it autocrossing and it did really well. I'm actually still on the RE71 RSs. I haven't swapped wheels, and we'll get to the reason for that here in a little bit, but it did great at autocross. Honestly, it was very good. Probably could use a rear sway bar to get it to rotate a little bit better, but again, we'll get to that. We went to Wookies in the Woods, which takes place on the Tail of the Dragon. I'm sure everybody's by now heard of the Tail of the Dragon, and it was so much fun. Made good memories. One of the best events, car events I've probably ever been to. It's more just like a hangout, go rip on some back roads, listen to some cool cars, see some badass cars. Great event. I'm definitely going to go in 2024. Obviously, we're going to go in this thing, and hopefully I have a little bit of upgrades by the time April or whenever they do it rolls around. This car's been to so many places, and it's always been just dead reliable. That brings me on to part 3, any issues and reliability issues. It does have high mileage, as I said, so it does have some rock chips, which is hard to see, but it is pretty weathered. I'm pretty sure, from what I can tell, this hood has been painted before because it's got a little bit of orange peel. Looks like somebody tried to already paint over some rock chips before. Typical things with age. My R logo is starting to chip, and then this grill down here is broken on the tabs, so needs a new lower grill. The bumper is pretty rock chipped as well. This is a clean title car. It's never been in an accident as far as I could tell, and as far as history tells as well. But the only real engine light that we ever got was for the PCV valve. That's honestly been the only failure I've had on this car. Everything else has just been maintenance, oil changes, brakes, tires, things like that. Well, the tires I guess I didn't need. I just chose to put really aggressive racing tires on this car because I'm an idiot. As you could tell, it is stock, but the only real issue I've ever had, or the only reason I got a check engine light, was because the PCV valve failed, which is a very common thing on these 2.0Ts, FSI specifically. Yes, I know it says TSI, but it's an FSI. And that's really the only issue I had. So instead of replacing the PCV, I just bought from, I think it was Integrated Engineering, I just bought a block off plate and moved on with my life. Car never stranded me or anything. It just made a god-awful noise and then threw a check engine light, but it never broke down or anything like that. Everything else has worked great. The radio sometimes gets weird and will disconnect you from Bluetooth for no reason and then fail to reconnect till you do a key cycle. So that's kind of annoying, but I wouldn't consider that anything as a breakage. And the only other issue I've really had is this car's got the AVS or whatever, where the headlights move around and self-adjust. Well, there is a fault in the system. It used to work for probably the first 6 months. It worked without issue. I maybe messed something up when I did these lenses. Who knows if it's my fault, but they point straight. It doesn't give me any warnings. It just doesn't do the cycle anymore. So that's something I might look into, but it's honestly a non-issue because the headlights point straight and they work great. And the only reason I really even know that this is not functioning is because one day I was at a gas station and I started up and I noticed it didn't do the up and left to right thing. And I was curious, like, oh, whatever, you know, it only does it every so often. But I hooked OBD11 to it and I saw that there is a fault in the headlight system for the self-leveling and whatnot. I haven't gone back into it. I don't know if I ever will, as long as it doesn't give me an issue, the headlights start pointing at the ground all of a sudden. I'm not really too concerned about it because they work, they point straight. So that's really the only thing that's broken on it. So to sum it up, this car hasn't really cost me much at all to keep up with repairs. And that also means that maybe it's time to do some things to it. You're gonna have to subscribe to the channel and see what we end up doing with the Golf R. But I think that it's been dead nuts reliable for a year straight. It's time to make it not so reliable because I like inconvenience in my own life. So if you are looking into a Golf R and you found one with higher mileage, as long as somebody took care of it and it's not heavily modified, it's a great car. Go and buy one. And like I mentioned, like, subscribe, and we'll see what we do with this car next because the time has come. And guys, see you on the next one.